Hey guys, welcome to That Pellet Show. Dan here.
Mick here, hello.
That was a lot of fun.
We're in experimental territory today.
We are.
What are we doing, Dan?
I had a really interesting question from one of our wonderful viewers, and he was asking me about, he's about to start doing some solos in his band.
Oh, great. Fans have kicked in. That's all good. Yeah, okay. I'll deal with that, mate. You
Right.
you carry on telling the story. I'll
Okay.
deal with the fans. How about that?
Great. So he was saying that he's about to start playing some solos in his band, and he really doesn't know how to approach it sonically. And I thought it was a really interesting question because I remember when my first solo, we were doing Money by Pink Floyd.
Right.
And I remember trying to, thinking, okay, my rhythm sounds okay, but I had no idea.
Yeah.
Where do I go from after get some chords together? How do you approach that? You're first stepping out, your first solo. What do you need to know to make it sound great?
Yep. We have done an edition on solo tones before, but it was like 2 studios ago.
Yeah.
Back in the old days.
Yeah.
It was a good show. It's been really well watched. It's a high number of views. So we'll probably recap some of the things we talked about there, but try and put some context on it. We had Fraser, our new assistant, make up some backing tracks. I was out of the office on a couple of days ago. I said, Fraser, can you just knock up a couple of backing tracks? Here's the thing. They need to be guitar-friendly keys, i.e. so we can use open strings, because, we're not Joey Landreth. Honk. They need to be sort of, enough space for us to be able to play over.
Yeah.
so that we can put some of these things perhaps in context. So that's what you're hearing. We're hearing it back through some floor wedges on the floor there, and we'll mix it all in at the end so it hopefully sounds something close to something approaching music.
You know, we'll see. We'll see.
I think it's also important to say that, you know, as guitar players, we are all focused on the solo a lot of the times. So for all of you
Rightly so.
screaming at the screen saying, look, it's not all about the solo. No, we know it's not. Being a proper guitar player is not about the solo. It's probably the last thing it's about. However, being a proper guitar player, you will be expected to play a guitar solo from time to time. Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, the kind of flailing rock, overblown. I mean, hopefully it will be, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. A solo can be 3 or 4 notes just spaced out tastefully within an instrumental passage. So we'll try and cover all of that.
Amps today.
Yes, let's start there.
We're keeping it relatively simple. So we have the Vox AC15 and we have the Fender Hot Rod Deluxe. 2 of the most common amplifiers, you know, out there.
The way that's going to work is whoever is playing rhythm guitar, whoever's playing the chords underneath, has got the AC15 and that Rockett Touch OD.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever's playing the lead guitar has got that whole pedal board minus the Touch and the Hot Rod Deluxe. So hopefully that makes sense. The Touch is on there because we can just get a little bit of overdrive in the rhythm guitar sound to explain some concepts.
Sure.
So should we start from the top, Dan, and say that I've written a few notes, unfortunately. Apologies for that. Let's start from the top. Let's make an assumption that we're talking about a fairly traditional rock and roll type setup here.
Okay.
So we're talking about a drum kit.
Mm-hmm.
We're probably talking about another guitar player. We might be talking about a keyboard player.
Okay.
We're talking about a traditional rock and roll kind of band mix. Yeah.
Yeah, we are. All of these can be related to any sort of sonic space, but that's the sonic space that, you know, we're all familiar with.
It's kind of our default position, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
Definitely.
Yep.
So when we talk in generalities, that's what we're talking about. And that's the situation that most of us find ourselves in most of the time. You know, whether you're using a live drummer or whether you're playing to backing tracks, as we are today, it's the same thing. So if you're going to play a guitar solo then, Dan, what do you need? What needs to happen to your guitar sound to play a guitar solo?
Well, it needs to be heard.
Right.
First and foremost.
Audibility.
Audibility needs to be heard. And to do that, there's a couple of things. We can either add more of what we got, or we can shape what we've got so that it's heard. Either way, if you think of when a guitar solo happens, she or he has come to the end of whoa, and then the solo kicks in, right? Yeah. Now you think of the level that vocal's at.
Yeah.
Right? That's the level that you want that solo to come in at.
Put on a couple of, if you're the kind of person like we are who likes guitar solos and likes to listen to a great guitar solo, call up on your music streaming or audio playing device of your choice a couple of your favorite songs that have got your favorite guitar solos in and listen to how loud they are in the mix.
Yeah.
Just do that as a point of interest to illustrate what he's just said.
Yeah.
It can be quite instructive.
Yeah. Again, it's about context. It's not an excuse to say to everyone else in the band, well, I need to be blisteringly loud. It's about making sure that it's, it's appropriate. Sometimes, yes, it does need to be blistering loud, but it's so that it sits, so that you can be heard.
Yes. So that's number one. If you're going to play a guitar solo, you need to be heard. It needs to be audible. What's number two? The sound needs to be good.
Yeah.
It needs to be appropriate. So I think it's important not to confuse those two things, right? Because
very, very good.
What we're going to get into is most people's approach to getting a guitar solo is getting another pedal, adding it on the end and stepping on it, hoping that it's going to do all of the above. It might not. It might do one of those jobs. It might make you louder and so people can hear you, or shape the EQ, or a couple of things that we're going to go into, or it might add gain. Now, as we're going to get into, and as we've said a million times, adding gain does not make you audible. It very often makes you the opposite if you get it wrong.
Sure.
So number one, you need to be heard. Number two, it needs to be an appropriate, enjoyable sound
Yeah.
that's going to make you play well.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's worth thinking about those two things separately.
Sure.
Rather than assuming that one thing is going to solve those two problems.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
So bearing in mind there are those two things you need to satisfy, there are a number of ways you can achieve them.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we start with audibility?
Let's start with audibility, definitely.
And should we start old school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, this is really interesting.
So ask yourself a question.
I like this question.
Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? No. Do you feel lucky? Etc. Ask yourself a question. Do you consider your guitar sound as this, and then you add to it to get to the solo sound? Or do you consider your guitar sound as this, and you take away from it to get to the rest of your guitar sound?
That's great.
Because I think it's my opinion that the old school way of doing it was this.
Yeah.
Was you start there. And I think this is at the root of everyone out there who uses gainy amps, and they get their kind of core sound and then they want to make it louder. And that is a really difficult job trying to do that, because if you watch any of our videos on gain stacking, we talk about it in so many episodes. It's quite hard to make a gainy amp louder. It's a challenge, right? So the old school guys, they started here. They started with the plexi dimes across, and then they used this.
Yeah.
The common or garden humble volume control.
Can let's just pretend for a second the AC15 is our cranked amplifier with touch on.
We've got it there. So here's the AC15, okay, with no overdrive pedal. And then let's say this is your top sound. So this is a Rockett Touch overdrive.
See those two harmonics there?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Straight in.
Yeah.
That's a lot of overdrive by anyone's. Well, not by anyone, by most people's standards.
Right.
So old school would be literally, here's my rhythm sound. It's quite clean.
It's quite clean.
And actually mixing the two pickups is enabling me to get even more cleanliness.
Right.
And I would argue that in the majority of rock and roll situations, that is enough cleanliness for most chord parts.
Right.
And the difference in volume, actually, because the amp's compressing, once you turn the guitar up, it's loud, but it's not massively louder than listen to the transients in this, right? Oh, hang on. And then the transients in the full solo sound. It's louder, but it's not massively louder.
No, it's not.
And the waveform will tell the story that it's not massively louder.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the absolute peak of how loud that is. So that's the old school way.
So, and it's wonderful, but obviously it has its limitations.
Yeah, and bear in mind also we're using a humbucker guitar there. Dan, if you would be so kind just to show me what that sounds like with your single coil guitar. Would you mind just doing that clean sound again and rolling off a bit of tone?
Sure. Very, very interesting.
So there you go. I'm just going to turn that PA speaker off again. This one is now, the fan has come on. So we've got all that. We've got an enormous amount of texture and tone there, just off the volume pot of the guitar and the guitar's tone control. We haven't even turned the overdrive pedal off. So if you turn the overdrive pedal off,
lovely.
I think it can be a great liberating, if you're someone who uses a lot of pedals, it can be a massively liberating experience once in a while just to do that and remind yourself about the dynamic in the guitar and the amp and the pedal.
Yeah, because you've got to, in that sort of a context, you've really got to work everything that's going on. I mean, I never touch this.
Do you not?
Never touch the tone control.
Wow.
Well, very, very rarely.
Cool.
I have the tone control disengaged from the neck pickup.
Yeah.
Because I can always want a bit more top end from here.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing that happens when we go to the volume control, we are reducing the amount of output that comes from the guitar and hits that gain stage, be it the amp or the pedal. And that's why it cleans up. And it's also worth noting that single coils will clean up differently than humbuckers.
Yeah.
If you've got a treble bleed in here. So what we're talking about here is how we are interacting with that gain stage, and how we're changing the dynamics, the dynamic control here, with those gain stages of the amplifiers.
Because it's relevant to audibility, right?
Yeah.
Because your ear perceives different frequencies. Nearly lunchtime. Your ear perceives different frequencies. So if you change those frequencies, the level of audibility changes, and that tees in very nicely to EQ. Maybe we'll come back to EQ, I think, because at the moment we're talking about gain and we're talking about making it louder and quieter. So moving on from the old school approach, and to quote James Gadsden, it's not old school, it's the school. Sorry, I love that quote so much because there's so much knowledge in the way it was done when rock and roll was born, right?
Yeah.
So we should never forget that. Let's move on. So most of us don't just have one overdrive pedal and one amp and a Les Paul. And for anyone commenting now, yes, I do. Good for you. So this is a much more familiar world.
Sure.
For most of us, and certainly for most people who would tune into something called That Pedal Show. I hope. I hate pedals. So what have we got here, Dan?
Right, we have, looking at the top here, we have an OCD, which is a really broad range overdrive. We have the Suhr Riot, which is heavier tones. Then we have a couple of things we're looking at boosting. We have an EQ, we have the Engager Boost by Fender, and we have a Klon-style clone pedal, looking at shaping those frequencies. And then we also have a compressor when I diverge a bit from normal angry gain to clean, lovely, fluty gain. So what I wanted to have a look at, because one of the things that with the starting louder and getting quieter approach, one thing that's difficult with that is having a quieter, heavier tone, like a rhythm tone. So for example, with the Riot, so my clean tone is this. It's for that heavy, like really cranked master thing. It's such a great sounding pedal, but also you'll hear that it's crisp. There's loads of bottom, but it's a sort of sound that you're not going to have a lot of trouble soloing over or singing over. You know what I mean? It's there's a lot of compression in it. You know, feels very soft to play. You know, you don't get those hard edges,
and you lose all the transient, don't you?
Oh, yeah, of course.
What I find really interesting about that is when you step on the Riot for the first time, it sounds aggressive and it sounds big and it sounds loud, and everyone's like, "Oh my goodness me!" But I guarantee you that won't cut anywhere near as much as that first clean sound you had.
Sure. Now, a couple of things to consider with this. We need a platform that has enough headroom that we can turn this up and get extra volume. If the amp is already dimed and we've got the Riot into it and it sounds amazing, then boosting that sound, we're going to have real trouble trying to get any more volume level. All right. So now the Hot Rod Deluxe has got plenty of headroom. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to engage the Engager Boost. So what I'm going to do is set this up so you'll see that it's not really changing the core tone. So if I just go from now, just going to make that louder. Okay. Now, the Engager Boost at the moment is after the Riot. Okay. So the guitar is hitting the Riot. The things we're demonstrating with the volume knob and everything, that dynamic relationship is happening between the guitar and our first gain stage. Now, once we've created that sound, then that is being fed into the Engager Boost. All right. And we'll do a thing where we boost before the Riot so we can see what happens. But at the moment, I'm taking that Riot sound and using the Engager Boost without really changing any EQ. I'm just making that louder.
Make louder.
So all we did there, same sound.
100,000 people throwing something at the screen going, duh, you've just made it louder. Of course it works.
Yeah, right. Here's the caveat with that though. If I make that really, really distorted, okay? So loads of bottom end. Let's see if I can even scoop that in a bit more. Really heavy, really mid-scooped sound. Okay, so if we do the same thing, just chugging on an E chord.
A
even.
We'll do E if you want.
No,
Should we for a bit of
let's do it.
variation?
Yeah. That's good. Yes. All right. Cool. Sorry. So
that was a perfect example of all the things you should not do if
Right.
you're trying to be heard in a solo.
with the sweep picking stuff, that's when that thing can work really well because it's so compressed, all the notes even out. It's easy to play fast with that sort of a tone. It's hard to play fast when you have a dynamic tone.
Yeah, because the downside of that kind of sound is it soon gets lost in a dense mix.
Absolutely.
So you're doubling up on your problem, i.e. it's hard to be heard, plus you're playing a million notes. It's difficult to be heard.
Very
isn't it,
difficult.
in that,
Very difficult.
in that world.
I have heard guitar players, like really well-known guitar players, who use that sort of a sound, and the amount of volume they have to boost
Yeah.
to get that sound heard is extraordinary.
Yeah.
All right.
Because if you're using something like this with fairly flat EQ, then you're boosting everything. You're boosting the bass, you're boosting the mid-range, and you're boosting the treble, and you're boosting it all the same. So perhaps, is it worth having a look at what happens when we use a boost, but it's an EQ-shaped boost?
Yep, perfect. Exactly. Perfect.
So what we're doing now is we talked about audibility in terms of increasing volume, and that's what happens when you step on the boost. Now let's talk about changing the EQ
Yeah.
to increase audibility. You all right, mate?
Yeah, I got a tickle in my throat. Right, so here we go. This is just the right bus.
Okay, we've probably laboured that point enough. In the slightly higher gain world, I don't think Dan and I would ever be accused of being high gain in the high gain world, but in the
There was a time, my friend. There was a time.
in the slightly higher gain world, let's bring the gain down to something that's the kind of stuff that you and I would use,
Sure.
and is probably less overt heavy rock and more kind of Americana, blues, fusion-y stuff, maybe. Anyway, we can be as limiting as we want with labels. They're just guitar sounds, people. So why don't either of you then have a G7 on your board? That's probably a question that some people are asking at this point, because if you're talking about shaping and you're spouting all this knowledge about you should shape your gain sound with a G7, neither of you use one. Why not?
Because personally, I prefer to use a gain stage that has a certain shape to it.
Yeah. This is really crucial. So whether it's a treble booster at the beginning of your chain, and you can see shows we've done on treble boosters, whether it's something like a tube screamer, which rolls off a lot of bottom end and boosts the mid-range. See what's happening here? And another pedal in that line that really does that is the Klon-derived type overdrive. So I'm a massive fan of the Klon-type overdrive, as are many, 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 many players down the years.
Yeah.
Because whether you plug it into a cranked Marshall or whether you have it after your gain stage, it does a similar job, right? This is by Rock Your Repaired Amp, and it is the closest one that we have to my Silver Klon, right?
Yeah.
I'm just going to grab my strap for a second.
Okay.
Actually, that can stay plugged into there. So let's say the core normal bass overdrive sound would be something from this OCD.
Righteous.
A little bit more high on that. Turn that reverb down a bit. Save us some trouble. So that for me is just a fine all round bit of mid boosty in there. It's a nice straight all round. Nicely dynamic. So here we are then. We've swapped seats. Dan's going to play some rhythm guitar. He's now plugged in with his Tele through the touch overdrive into the AC15. Sounds like this. By comparison, my sound is a little flatter than that and sort of sits away. It would be hard to stand out if you just play anything. I got two problems. Problem one, I'm not loud enough. Problem two, the EQ shape is not cutting through.
That's right.
What I'm hoping, if what I know about the dear old Klon type pedal takes effect, and this is with the Klone. Oh, where is it in the signal path, Dan?
It is
after. Great. So what I'm hoping is the Klone will help me poke out a little bit better.
Okay.
Let's see. It's a really odd experience because he's hearing my amp hit him in the back of the head, and I'm hearing his amp in the back of the head. One great tip for better solo tones is to stand where you can hear your amp. No,
it's the shape of that. It's like a perfect boost. You can see why people love it.
That's
for a boost.
That is what I use my Klon pedal for. Is exactly that. And even if you've got it coming after, so let's say I've got something like something like this OCD, like a fairly full range thing with quite a lot of gain. It's not set that way at the moment, but in fact, let's just do that. Let's give it loads more gain, and let's just see what happens with when it's got loads of gain. Same thing. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, these are fairly ugly examples, but even with a pedal that has a lot of gain on, you can still add that Klon-type boost after for awesome audibility.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and one of the advantages with that circuit is that circuit itself has a lot of headroom. You can really hit that hard.
Yeah.
And it has places to go.
And it's, you know, if you're running into a gainy amp at this point, then it's not going to have the same effect because the amp's going to overdrive a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole conversation is intertwined absolutely with gain staging and understanding what's going to overdrive and where you have headroom. But the perfect example of it's kind of doing this job in terms of EQ. So it's rolling off a bit of bass and it's adding those mid frequencies, certainly the upper mid frequencies. And it might be adding a little bit of gain, but not much.
Sure.
It's just doing a shaping job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've looked at the higher gain sounds and boosting those and shaping those, the lower gain sounds and why we like, gain pedals, tube screamers, clones, things that have that shape in them. What about clean tones?
What you get with a clean sound, of course, with an overdrive sound, it just rounds everything off. So it's more compressed. It's the difference in playing dynamic when you hit the string hard and soft is not as pronounced as it is with a clean sound. So you're set with a bunch of different problems here.
Yep.
Clean sounds, although they are more audible, also require a lot of volume.
Yes, absolutely.
So how do we control that?
So a great way, if you're doing a cleaner solo and you don't want all the distortion, but you want the that sort of dynamic limiting, then we use a compressor. This is the Ego compressor from Wampler. It's a really well regarded by lots of really great players. And so what that will do is that will give us that same compressed dynamic that we get with the overdrive pedals without adding the distortion. Okay, so if you want to...
swap again?
Yeah, we swap. A quick tip on setting up your compressor. Lots of people, when they set up the compressor, it sounds great when they dial it in, but when they actually go to play live, they find that they turn on the compressor and they can't hear it.
Right.
One of the things is, often when I set up the compressor, if I go like this, then I hit the compressor, it's loud. And I think, well, there's my solo boost. However, if I'm playing rhythm, because the compressor,
it's compressing.
It's exactly. It's doing what it says on the tin. It's removing that sort of the level of dynamics. So you need, when you're setting up your compressor, make sure that you are playing the way that you would, that it's receiving the amount of level from your guitar. Okay, so for a solo tone, I'm going to actually have to turn that up a little bit. Okay, so if you play anything, and I'll just go from a nothing, just a straight guitar into amplifier tone, and you'll hear these initial spikes.
Yep.
And then I'll turn the compressor on, and you hear the difference.
Cool. I've added some tremolo because I feel like it. What key, Dan?
Your choice.
Let's do G. I like G.
All right. no. So you immediately hear with the compressor on that I can actually make a note sustain.
Yeah.
All right, which I
What do you
can't
always say,
do.
Dan? What do you always say?
Well, compressor is the overdrive for your clean tone. All right. So now the great thing that we can do with the compressor is that we can use that with other pedals. So for example, if I bring the OCD back down to a lower gain tone, okay. So here is my is the OCD. And I can use the compressor into the front of that. So if you play the G thing again. So, so getting notes to sustain without having to add gain and distortion on the compressor is fantastic.
It works so well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It works brilliantly well.
Yeah. But also, that level control then allows you to boost that signal. Perfect for the clean solos. Okay, so we've done the higher gain stuff. We've looked at the, using the EQ'd, the mid scoop tones, the more mid boosty tones, how we can just add volume, how we add shape to that, how we use the, how we can boost a clean tone. The last thing we're going to have a look at is how we can use delays to help add a little bit of, shall we say, texture.
Right. So it's not normally your first thought with delay would be, I need this delay to, support me.
Sure.
Are we using it in that context? Or
we can do. So for example, I've got two delays here, all right? I've got a very simple MXR carbon copy.
Yeah.
Probably the most common's not the right word, widely available analog delay. Well loved. It's a wonderful sounding thing. Now, it's analog. There's no digital processing going on here, and it's fantastic. If you want to add a simple echo or a shorter delay, an analog thing is wonderful. So if we this is the sound of. Let's go back to that compressed tone. Carbon copy on top of that.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's so dark.
It's so dark.
It totally stays out of the way.
Yeah, and that's what people love about it. Because if you're doing a solo, it's nice to have a little bit of that texture in the background. But what you don't necessarily want is to have those really anything that gets in the way. And sometimes the edges of those thing repeats can start to intrude.
We can demonstrate that, can't we? Because we can set up the flashback to have a clean
for sure
repeat and show how that compares. So we've
got quite a bit of delay in the MXR, but just again to show you how that can stay out of the way. If I put I'm going to use the compressor into the OCD, so there's quite a lot of compressed solo tone going there. If I put the carbon copy on top of that, you'll hear. So just play anything for me.
I'll go for something overdriven this time. How about that? Let's stay in G. Why not? inspired rhythm guitar playing, I think you'll find.
It's in time. That's, better than I can say.
That's questionable.
But what you'll hear as soon as that delay comes in, even though it's not a crazy amount of delay, it's not, I'm not doing anything rhythmically clever with the delay. It's just there as an echo.
Yeah.
All right. A lot of people get really caught up with the idea of tap tempo. And even though tap tempo for specific delay times is great, sometimes essential, if you're just after a little bit of echo, a little bit of wash in the background, find a delay time that works. And you can do wonderful things. Now, if we swap over.
Right.
Now, what I'd love you to do is do the same thing, but with a shorter delay time. Again, this is something that analog delays are really good at.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll play and I'll turn the delay time down as we do it.
Okay.
You go. So I've got what have I got on? The OCD.
The OCD.
Yeah.
I had a bit of compression on.
Yeah.
And the carbon copy.
Cool. Go for it.
Okay.
Really interesting what effect it has on where the guitar sits relative to the rest of the music.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So, long delays are really fantastic.
Music.
But one of the things, if you're going to start doing some solos, mess around with some delay times, mess around with some shorter delay times, because that can really help. Just it lifts the sound and just puts it in a space that it won't get lost. It's really interesting. Now, the other side of this is a digital delay. Digital delays, when they came along, they gave us longer delay times primarily. So we could have these long, really clear delay times. So if something for like an old studio trick is actually to have a really long delay on something, on a vocal or whatever, just sat underneath the mix. And it just helps. It just gives it a bed.
Yeah.
So the flashback from TC, really great. You can, loads of different sounds in there, but for just a really simple, clean, long delay, the digital thing is great. Again, we do the same thing, but now if you use a really long delay.
Okay. So let's hear the flashback a sec.
I want it twice as long as that.
That's pretty long.
That's pretty long. Perfect.
This will be hilarious. Just contrast that with a medium delay time.
Sure.
So.
Yep.
Yeah.
2, 4.
Not as bad as I was thinking.
No.
I was thinking it would be absolutely killing everything and like washing everything over badly, but actually it was fine.
No,
it was fine.
I think what the really long delay gives you, it gives you a complete separation of what you played. With those shorter delays, it's still very much connected.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the really long ones, they're their own thing, sort of floating around in the background.
It's amazing actually. If you hear any soloed tracks from records that you might like, sometimes they surface on various social platforms. It's amazing how wet some of those guitar sounds are.
Yeah.
It's harder to get away with it live, I think.
There we go.
All right. Let's summarize with some tips.
Yes.
And then maybe we'll just jam out over the track there to try and put some of this stuff in context.
Okay.
Yeah. Quickly, here's our tips for playing a solo.
Yes.
And what to play if it's not a set piece thing that you've already learned all the notes for. Number 1, this is my one. Play half as many notes as you think you want to play, and have the confidence to do that.
Yeah.
Because you will be heard.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get loads of notes out that you're not quite all over, it'll just sound like a mess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your favorite one?
My favorite one, breathe. If you focus on breathing, focus on bringing the natural rhythm of take a breath. Think about horn players.
Yeah.
Think about the way horn players, they have to breathe. So if you try just playing, you'll naturally get phrases that have space in them.
Yeah, if you find that difficult, think of a conversation. Think like you're having a conversation with somebody. Some people we know just keep talking and never stop talking. A meaningful conversation is where both people talk for sort of equal amounts of the time.
Sure.
And that can be a good way to think about breathing. So
Very
you
good.
say a phrase and then you wait for a response.
Nice.
That can be quite nice.
Like it.
This is really simple. Start low, end high. Start down here, end up here.
And build up to the wah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it.
And what goes along with that is have somewhere to start and somewhere to end. And then if it doesn't end when you finished your last note, you've got a problem. But hopefully you'll know roughly how long the solo is.
Very good.
Don't be in a rush to get up there, basically.
Yeah.
Your favourite one, Dan. Second favourite one.
Oh, okay. It's about outlining the chords, and it doesn't have to be clever. If you're playing in the key of A, all the notes are there.
So if you're ever stuck for anything to play, isn't it? It's just play the notes in the chord.
Play the notes in the chord. Yeah.
And bend them around
It'll
a bit.
always bend them around a bit. It'll always sound good.
Yeah, don't play them necessarily on each of the 4 beats in the bar. If
Yeah.
there are 4 beats in the bar, or at the 13 if you're playing a prog song. You can play in between and in around and not every single one, and it'll work fine.
Great.
Finally, related to that, never start on the 1. That was Pete Thorne's tip.
Pete Thorne, beautiful man.
If you're gonna play a guitar solo and you don't know what to play, never start on the first beat of the bar. Just start somewhere else.
Great.
Before it or after it. Doesn't matter.
Very good. I
Good.
really like that. Really like that.
And then summaries for tone. Try, if you can, to separate that. 2 things you need for a guitar solo. 1, audibility. You need to be heard. 2, you need a sound that's appropriate. The solution for this might not be the solution for that.
Yeah.
But go for that one first.
Yep.
Go for audibility first every time.
Yep.
And this can be difficult because when you're sound checking, the sound engineer says, give us your loudest sound. And they say, well, that's way too loud. And you're like, It's not. I promise you it's not. When the whole band's going and I need to be heard above the band, I promise you it's not too loud. The sound engineer might say, it's all right, I got you. They haven't got you till the last 3 notes.
Yeah.
Majority of gigs I do.
That is really important. Don't rely on the sound guy to boost you for your solo.
Yeah. As long as you're quiet in the singing,
it's fine.
and when there's music happening, if you're loud for your solo, who is going to complain?
Yeah.
And if they complain, that's annoying.
Love it.
So that's so audibility and an appropriate sound. You pretty much always need less gain than you think you need.
Yes.
Pretty much always.
Yeah.
For
Agreed. 100%.
For audibility's sake, and also for expression in playing and things like touch and feel and all those things that we care about as guitar players. So back the gain off, and don't be afraid to turn the bass down, which is what this is doing and what that was doing, and you heard the clear effects of that.
Beautiful. Love it. Cheers, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Please don't forget to hit the like button. Apparently, it's not hitting the like button anymore. It's smashing the like button. Apparently, that's the new thing the kids are doing.
Okay.
All right.
Smash that like button.
Smash that like button. Also, massive thank you to our patrons on Patreon. Couldn't do it without you guys. So
thank you
genuinely, thank you so much. Also, to everyone that's gone to thatpedalshowstore.com and purchased a garment or a hat or
a pedal or a journal or a pencil or many of the other things we have.
Or fezzes.
Fez would be cool.
Fez would be cool. Also, to our preferred retailers in the UK and Europe is
Anderson's Music of Guildford in Surrey.
And in Australia.
Would be Pedal Empire, No More Riff City. They have wound up. So
they have wound up.
Yeah. Our best wishes to you guys out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Jamage?
Shall we jamage then, Dan, and see what happens? Here we go. Here we go. Mr. Sulu, you have the controls.